So if you want to talk about king of the hill positioning, you do need to have a couple of good positions with support that you're comfortable with. But if you're not moving as a support based off of the enemy, okay, so let's actually start the map guide here. Okay, so first question I get is, how do I position as a support on ILIOS? And the answer is, stop trying to memorize positions. Memorize things like you want a little bit of range as on a Zenyatta, you want cover, you need LOS of your team, preferably the enemy team as well. And live by those guidelines, right? Now, is that going to be rolling out on high ground? Is that going to be rolling out on this position here, playing this position here, this position here, this position here, this position here, and sometimes even, yes, on point? And the answer is yes, all of those positions are very reasonable. The problem is you can't, especially in Overwatch 2 with the removal of one tank and how dynamic positioning in these fights are, you really need to stop looking for one spot to roll out with on support or DPS or even a tank. You need to react to with where the enemy team is. So if I'm playing high ground as Ana and they go snipers, okay, they have a hit scan on high ground, I really shouldn't be standing there. I need to drop, okay? I need to drop and establish a sight line. I rotate here, the enemy tank starts to rotate this way, okay, then I need to rotate away, keep my distance, rotate to here. Okay, Genji takes the high ground, okay, then I rotate all the way up to here. Maybe I even flip the map, okay? You need to continually react to basically what the enemy team is doing and where they are rotating to and establish positioning as a result. So, and this is not just an ILIOS problem, this is a King of the Hill problem. People's problems with the King of the Hill is because the maps are a lot more, like, for lack of a better term, circular, you know what I'm saying? Like, there isn't like a static push and pull. People really struggle with movement. So if you can't move comfortably, and you can't move from point A to point B to point C to point D to point F and react based off of what the enemy team is doing, you're going to have a problem in all rules with positioning on this map. So I'm going to give you guys some guidelines of some good positions to hold. But don't take my word as gospel. Instead, take them as inspiration. And remember things like cover, sight lines, the range of your hero, where the enemy team is, and then react based off of what's happening here. So King of the Hill has much less pick a position and much more react to what you're given with and apply fundamentals like cover. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to do things just from this side, but obviously it's mirrored on the other side. I do think rolling out high ground for some heroes is good. The only problem with high ground is that I do think it's a little bit overrated because it is very exposed. So even with like the bell and then like this little fancy thing here, you need to be very careful about playing this position if they have better ranged heroes than you. It's totally fine to either drop or to utilize a different sight line. For example, you can peek out here and contribute without peeking their high ground as much. You can also peek out here if the fight's breaking out on point. I love this sight line. The sight line's really, really powerful. So these are things to kind of look to leverage and utilize. You can also look to drop and control sight lines from here. So like these are your sight lines that's powerful here. Cage also is good for you. If you're playing a DPS or a shorter sightline flanker like Genji, this little flank to their high ground as well is really, really powerful. A lot of times first fight teams will meet in this cage. One of the best things that you can do is not to stack up here, but to look for a safe angle to rotate on this way. This is a little bit close for people, but even just taking like a sight line here can be really strong to establish a bit of an off angle to deny the enemy team's cover. Highly recommend doing that. If they meet here, well then you can take the cage flank and try to fight for the cage flank in here. A lot of tracers and sombras, Genjis, even wrecking balls and stuff are going to be kind of utilizing this cage or going all the way around coast side to look to wrap it around from this way. So big thing to keep in mind, guys, is that like this map has like really like 3 combat zones. You've got cage, you've got bell, and you've got point. If your people are going point, well, you've got the entire rest of the map to take off angles from. Going point is generally not recommended. You should only go point if you have like a Rhine May symmetric comp. For the most part, you want as few people as possible on point, because if everybody groups up on point, that means the enemy team can take every angle in the game. If you ever play versus a comp that all goes point, don't panic. Just take every off angle that you possibly can. If they fight on bell, then it's very reasonable to take off angle positions on right and take off angle positions on left. Keep in mind that on left, these type of positions are more congested. So if you're like playing like a sniper, or a spam hero, this area is not as powerful. If you're playing like Genji, Tracer, Sombra, Reaper, Lucio, Moira, Kiriko, this is a little bit more attractive. If you're playing more ranged heroes, either rolling out high ground or even coach gunning, lunging, grappling, taking a position more along this sightline is a lot more favorable. This sightline is also, position is also really, really good for pharmacies and echoes or anything with vertical mobility, because this building provides a lot of cover. You can get on top of hit scans, and you can even wrap all the way to their spawn and utilize the cover from their own high ground against them. So I really, really think you need to look at this map, think about your hero's range, and decide which side of the map you kind of want to lean into. Obviously react to what's given to you, but be very, very careful about that. Point is important. Obviously it is isolated by itself, but we want to like leverage and try to capture point. If, like I said, everybody's grouped up on point, don't panic, take all the off angles that you can in the world. Do not forget that this mega health pack exists on both sides. Everybody knows about this one, but they often forget about that one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else here. Chat, do you have any questions about this round? Let's start for this. Do you have any questions about this round? This particular round of KOTH. Yeah, grind FFA. Grind deathmatch. No questions? We'll give it like one more minute. I'll chop this out of the YouTube video. You got about holding point and retaking. I mean, retaking point should really be trying to retake space of some way, shape, or form. Whether that's attacking cage side, whether that's trying to retake high ground, or whether it's putting one person on cart. If you control point, I do not recommend you keeping people on point. Maybe one person on an off angle, but you want to try and get back to this pillar here. You want to try to get back to this cage side. You want to try and get back to this high ground. And one of the big mistakes that I see from defenders is that, oh, we capture point, let's all stand on point, when in reality, that's just going to confirm or increase the odds that you're going to lose the fight. So what you want to do is you want to have one person on point, potentially either like standing or being able to touch and contest point, while everybody else thinks about making the rest of the enemy teams walk forward as miserable as you possibly can. Is it good to push from the pool rooms? Not particularly, no. You can if you're a flanker, like a Tracer Sombra, you can get really sneaky, a Wrecking Ball and so on. You could do all sorts of like sneaky flanks to pressure point. You can wrap around all the way to the spawn, but for most heroes, not really, no. Chat. Okay. All right, so well is a little bit different. Now, what makes well unusual is that the point is the main hub of fights. So most players rotate immediately and stand here and take trades. The problem with this is not very good for certain matchups. For example, if I'm playing a hero like a Reinhardt, Reaper, Mei, Lucio, this position is okay. But like, let's say they've got a Hanzo, Orisa, Bastion, something like this. I'm just going to get out spammed. So what you kind of need to do is you need to try to find a way to close the distance. Moving to this corner here is really good. Also utilizing this angle through here, this flank to here, even just to threaten the enemy team, or at the very least being able to push them from here to here. It's a much shorter sight line. So you need to utilize the cover on the windmill, the mill side of the map to be able to close the distance, either from inside the room or even just juggling from corner to corner. Obviously, you got to be careful for boobs, but that goes without saying. The other option that you could do, especially if you are a ranged DPS or even a ranged support, is I really like starting my rollout as like an Ana Zen, and either like taking the long way through the stairs here and rolling out to here, so that I can kind of get a decent sight line here. Maybe if my Ryan goes here, I might have to stack with my Ryan as an Ana. But if I'm like playing like a Zen, Kiriko, Hanzo, even like a Genji, I like to roll out in this side. And I get a little bit of information once I'm here. And then I make the decision about whether I want to drop and spam from this off angle here. Notice that this off angle denies the cover of this part of the map from the spam here. And sometimes I might even deepen here, like a Cassidy. I might even deepen into this room. It's very similar to the cage from the previous round, but the difference is that there's actually some distance here if people aren't meeting you here, and even meeting you here, there's a little bit more space for you to work around. So this part of the map is actually way underutilized in low to mid ranks, and it's really important because it prevents everybody from just kind of stacking here and surviving. Going this angle means that the people hiding behind the wall take a lot of damage, and I think that's really important. Also, if you're running something like a Tracer, Sombra, Reaper, Winston, Wrecking Ball, a lot of the flankers utilize this side of the map to set up for backline. They'll wrap around, this way. They'll maybe off angle this way. If you got like a Sombra, she might go all the way into your spawn and wrap around this way. All that kind of stuff. And I think this is like a really, really important way to do this. Now, you guys will see Overwatch League players sometimes set up their backline in this off angle position. This can work in dive matchups, but it's probably not going to be relevant in 99.9% of your games. So I'm not going to even mention it. You can roll out here on high ground. On retake, if they're holding on cage, it can be a pretty good position. But for the most part, you're either going to be looking to take an angle here or looking to take an angle here. Now, one thing I do see messed up is I don't want to see my support standing here. I like this corner here. I like this corner here. I even like this corner back here. And if you want to make a play, there's also nothing wrong sometimes with taking an aggressive angle here. But like if I'm playing an Ana, I might go for a quick nade here. But please do not stand out in the open. Point is a death trap. You do not want to be standing out on the point whenever you can. Now, another super underutilized part of the map is actually the far right mill high ground. Tracer, Genji, Echo, Pharah, Baptiste, my mind is going blank here. Diva, Winston. There are so many heroes that can utilize this side of the map, not just to spam and play on point like you might see Baptiste taking a safe angle here, but to actually wrap all the way around and access the enemy backline from here. I mean, heck, you even see Tracers rolling out on high ground here, blinking across here, and then going 3, 2, 1, blink across here, and they have immediate access to backline that way. There are so many uses for this side of the map. Pharahs and Echoes really like to abuse this cover right here, just like the previous round. It's very, very, very strong. The only problem, of course, is that if you're playing on a hero like Genji, if you don't have a healer with you, you're going to be completely out of your support LOS, and there aren't really that many good health packs around here. This one's a little bit deep. There is this one which you could play around with, but yeah. So basically, if you're playing a short sightline flanker, maybe a Reaper or something like that, this is pretty good. Reinhardt, you guys can kind of use this room to close the distance on the squishies. I really like this room here. If you're playing something a little bit longer distance, I kind of like this side of the map here. Don't just stand grouped up on main. If you're using something with a little bit of vertical mobility or something like Tracer that can blink across in this high ground, this side of the map is also really good. You can even do this as Hanzo versus comps that don't have like a Genji or something like that, right? Pretty good. And then again here, I do see a consistent error very similar to the last one where a lot of teams when they win the fight, they'll all group up on point and like hold this choke here. And while this choke is pretty good, it doesn't really let you take a lot of good off angles. Like everybody's just kind of in a giant clump and you're kind of vulnerable to boops. You're kind of vulnerable to people taking a flank over here and assassinating you. Heck, they could even roll out on high ground across from here and do that here. Oh, by the way, that's another thing to utilize here. Don't forget that you can path here with heroes that don't have vertical mobility like a Cassidy, and you can really catch people off guard by kind of dropping and peeking here. They won't even see you going through this door. So if they're holding close. But yeah, anyway, long story short, having somebody holding the choke here is okay. I kind of like letting them out onto point a little bit, where maybe my DPS over here, my support in a safe position back here has better angles. Just like the previous map though, there's going to be a lot of squishies moving left, moving right, pushing and pulling. Don't just stand in a position. If I'm playing Ana here, and I see the Cassie wrap around on my flank left, I'm not going to sit here. I know what he's going to do. I knew he's going to wrap around and shoot me in the butt cheeks, so I'm going to move my old grandma butt cheeks and move to right here, right? I'm going to rotate this way. If I see the Reinhardt and Reaper pushing in here, I'm not going to stand here like an idiot. I might rotate to this position here. Heck, I might even flip the map and rotate all the way to over here. You got to pay attention to this stuff. Whether you're a DPS, a support, or a tank, you can't just turn your brain off here. You can also utilize this high ground here to jump up and over with heroes that have vertical mobility to be really sneaky there. That's mostly it. In terms of relevant health packs, pretty much all of them are very well known. You guys know the minis here. You guys know the mini in the back mill. Everybody should know the mega all the way over here. I think there's a health pack over here. Yep, there's a mega all the way over here. It's not super well utilized. It's not very well placed, but it's worth knowing. Yeah. Any questions? Is it viable for flankers to roll out on coast high ground? Yes, it is. Why do Winstons take the opposite high ground in Owl? You mean this one or this one? The one on coast or the one over here? A lot of it is knowing that they want to get to the squishies on this high ground, and so this way allows them to get healed by their Ana, and if they see an advantage, they can jump onto the opposing high ground. But if you go over here, it's too easy. It's too hard for your support to heal you and too easy for the enemy Ana to shoot you. But yeah, definitely a tricky one. Definitely a tricky one. And obviously it goes without saying that boops are pretty strong here. So, you know, try to avoid playing on point for more than one reason. For Sombra, what's a good rollout for this map to the first fight? I think one of your better rollouts is going to be actually utilizing this left door here and going up all the way across the stairs, wrapping across this ledge here and ledge running, and then getting the hack on the mini. And then from the mini, you can keep your translocator like up here. And then from here, you can either look to set up in their spawn from here, or if they're playing a composition without a lot of poke, you can kind of off angle and just live forever here. One of the things I used to do in quick play sometimes when I was playing with friends is I'd pick Sombra here, and if they had a comp without like a hit scan, I would sit here with a hacked mini and I would off angle and spam and spam and spam and spam and spam and spam, just basically self-sustained for ages, and I'd build an EMP like first fight. Now this was back in Overwatch 1, but some of the similar principles there. Any other questions? A lot of the KOTHs have more it depends answers. So being more familiar with a map comes with time, but also just with like limit testing. Playing Coast in the mini seems tempting. Well, the only problem is that it's very short sightline. So if you were to go for a play on Sombra here, you'd be very close to the enemy team, which isn't great as Sombra. You want to kind of give yourself more options, and the left side generally gives you more engage options. Any other questions? A lot of tanks are pretty good in this map. I think the boot potential definitely opens up the door for more tanks to be viable. For example, this would be a terrible Wrecking Ball map if it weren't for the fact that there is a boot value. Could you get into the spawn camp on this part of the map? Yeah, so a lot of times, sometimes you'll see teams that play like really, really aggressively here. And then they're just kind of spamming the crap out of this choke. People can't even leave the spawn doors. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So the first thing you need to do is stop walking out of this door. Immediately, especially if you're playing a hero with high pick potential, try to get out this door here and look to basically cause chaos either through this angle here, or even wrapping all the way around from here. If you're a flanker, even more important. So stop running it down mid. Utilize the angle on the opposite side of the high ground. Now, Ruins is, I would say, probably the simplest of the modes because it's a little bit more linear. You still need to pay attention to the dynamic positioning that I was talking about. Don't just autopilot on this side of the map, turn your brain off. So first things first, right side of the map is really, really important for really pretty much every composition. You really need to make sure that you are trying to control this side of the map as fast as you possibly can, especially if you have heroes with a little bit of range. This is where you get your sight lines here, right? Like along here onto point. If you end up stuck over here as a hero with sight lines, you're going to have a really bad time. So you need to try and get control of this left side if you can. If they roll out with a composition that just brute forces it, okay, don't brute force it back. You can try to ping pong the opposite side. And this is something that I don't see utilized a lot. This position isn't really good, right? But this position is. So if you're playing like Hanzo, Ana, Cassidy, Zenyatta, looking for an angle, Kiriko, whatever, and you can't get the left sight line, don't try to brute force it. Just swing on the opposite side and poke them out from here. Really important that you're controlling or at least one or pressuring at least one of the sides of the point, either the left or the right. It doesn't really matter which one. Obviously this side's a little bit more attractive because it's a little bit more space. There's a nice little mega health back. There's more room and less likely of a chance of just falling off. But if you can't win it, having at least some pressure here is really important. The other mistake that I see in this map a lot is that people tend to just drop to the point for no particular reason. You do need to cap point, but remember the point doesn't open up immediately anyway, and you really want as few people on point as possible because it is a death trap. There is no space on the map. There's no cover on the point at all outside of these little rocks here. So if you are going to cap point, you kind of want to hug this here if they're right there and just try and get as close to the wall so they don't peek you. Okay, so basically, point is important, that you really want to put as few people as you possibly can on point and try to take the space around and off of point as fast as you possibly can. And then in terms of the retake, so this is the hardest part about this map in a lot of ways, is that you don't get the opportunity to like take any high grounds, and walking out of this choke can feel really, really, really bad. One of the biggest problems that I see is when people are holding close here, which is pretty good, is that everybody tries to walk out of the choke at once. What you need to do is send at least, if you're a ranged DPS or anything, even a flanker, take this angle here from the mega, distract them, even deepen. If you're a flanker, you can keep going, right? I can't tell me how many times that you going here as a Tracer, Genji, Sombra, Wrecking Ball, Cassidy, Hanzo, and so on is going to create a lot of space. The other thing that you can do as well, if you have vertical mobility, okay, is you can utilize this angle here. Again, creating distraction, creating space. Flankers can also utilize this room here, wrapping around. This one's a little bit harder and a little bit more obvious because you're more likely to run into backliners here. But don't just try to punch it through the choke. Try to be creative with your approach, wrapping around either right or left, so that you're going to be able to not get spammed out in the main choke. For holders, defenders, I think there's really only 2 spots of the map that you really want to hold most of the time. This choke here is pretty good, right? As long as you're aware of what's happening on the left and what's happening on the right. And I see a lot of people hold this here, but I actually don't love it that much because it kind of puts an awkward position for your backline where it's like you're not really stuffing them in the choke because there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 angles that they can attack you from. And so it doesn't really quite have the benefit of this choke, but it also doesn't like quite have the benefit of holding point where it's like you have all the space in the world. So I like to basically either hold the choke there or basically hold point, even if it's like holding it here where you can get, you know, your supports over here, your DPS over here, you got a flanker over here, right? This, when you're holding here, you're not really leveraging your advantage as much because your DPS and supports aren't in better positions than the attackers. So you're either stuffing a choke or you're letting your supports and DPS have better cover and better off-angle positions. You kind of get to pick, you pick your poison here, whatever one you want to hold for the defense. One little thing as well, let's talk about hit scan for a second here. So everybody knows the Widow rollout. I do think that the fall off nerf is going to be a little bit more of a factor on this particular map. So Widowmakers, you can push the bill by pushing it here. You can also push the bill by trying to rotate and take a sightline here, although it's a little bit worse. But something that's especially good for Hanzo's, Widowmakers, Ashes with vertical mobility is this freaking sightline right here. This is the juice, right? Not only do you have a sightline on point, but you also have a sightline on the really relevant left side of the map. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Widowmakers, we need to be careful because they are a little bit close, but honestly, that's kind of how new Widowmaker is going to work right now. So I highly recommend giving that one a shot. Genji's, Tracers, Sombras, Reapers, and so on. Either utilize this flank to wrap around to their spawn, or you can get really close and shoot spam from here. Again, as I said, this is also pretty good for others' ranged DPS as well. Tanks, 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 tanks. Understand your matchup versus the enemy composition. If I'm playing Reinhardt with Lucio speed, I can pretty much brute force this area clear. I can just go in there swinging and clear it all out. If I run straight to point as a Ryan Lucio and they take all the high ground off angles, I'm going to die. However, if the shoe's on the other foot and I'm playing like a Sigma versus a Ryan May, I'm not going to be able to brute force it. I'm going to have to be able to spam them out, and maybe I look to off angle here. Heck, maybe I even off angle here to try and create a little bit of a spam pressure. So you need to create a little bit of a distance. A lot of compositions are viable on this map. A lot of compositions are viable on this point because it does have decent spam sightlines, but also has a lot of cover for more brawly compositions. Relevant health packs. Obviously, pretty much everybody knows where all the relevant health packs are. The megas on this side here. I mean, it's just a cornucopia of megas, right? There's essentially 3 megas for each side plus the one in the middle. Are there even any relevant minis? And I want to say no. I think it might just be all megas. I just now realized that. That I don't think there are any mini health packs in this map. Wow, I don't know why I just now noticed that. So yeah, there's that. This high ground is also pretty good for defenders. So like if you're holding on defense and you have a hero with mobility like Tracer, Genji, Cassidy, if you're trying to cheese, hiding up here and kind of letting them walk out to here and then pouncing them here is pretty darn good. Highly recommend that. You can also utilize this little jumpy here to get onto the high ground. You can do that even if you don't have, I believe you can do that even if you don't have vertical mobility. So something to try and leverage. If you're having a hard time getting up into this, use this rock, then this stone, then this stone, and then from here, stone, 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 boing, right there. So there you go. Inside the buildings, one on each side. Yeah. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else here. So I see a lot of supports like to kind of hold this position here, and while this position isn't too bad, it does expose you a little bit to the right and to the left. So remember your ping pong, your dynamic positioning. If you see a lot of people going here, it's okay as a DPS and support to rotate this way, and vice versa. It's also okay to rotate to this way and rotate to this way. We do not want to see people standing out in the open. There is so much cover here for DPS and supports. There's really no excuse to not have at least a little bit. Okay, any questions? Any questions? How should you path as a support if the enemy has snipers and your team doesn't? So you kind of can run it down main for the most part, and then right about here, you can path here, but you've got to be very cautious about their support sightlines on that high ground and the back one. So you can rotate to here as well, and then rotate to here, but obviously you're peeking this here. The other option is to kind of utilize what I was saying on the opposite side, where you can peek here, or even better, rotate to this sightline right here where it kind of cuts them off. Just be careful when you're here that you are exposed to them peeking the opposite door because you don't have any cover.